Just checking the lighting
أعوذ
system.
بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. أهلا وسهلا again from Masjid Sadaran Community Center on our live broadcast coming your way from Masjid Sadaran Community Center. Today again, I would like to welcome my brother Dr. Wazir Kudrat. Dr. Wazir was here with us, I think last, what day I had you, Brother Wazir? I think Sunday.
Sunday, yes,
Yeah,
yes.
mashallah. So, ahlan wa sahlan to have you again. Today, inshallah, we want to explore some areas of uh, how we can maximize Ramadan, right? Brother Wazir is no stranger to us. Last time we introduced him as a medical doctor who did his MD program at University of Baghdad. He's a graduate also of the University of Guyana, and he's been practicing in his teaching career. He is the CEO of Kudrat Health Education, CEO of Kudrat Medical Board Review. He also attended a special one-year Islamic course in Guyana held many years ago. So, Dr. Wazir, today I want us to discuss with our viewers how we can maximize Ramadan. And I think the first thing that comes to mind, let me roll the ball, that worship is an art. And it is an art that every worshiper must master. And so Ramadan is included in this part of this worship. And I think very few of us really master the art. I think it's an art that we have to study, and this is the reason why we want to share today of how we could maximize this art of worshiping Allah in Ramadan, because Ramadan is not an ordinary ibadah. It is an ibadah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us, that we can come out of Ramadan with all our sins forgiven. So it is a big deal, right? So how we advising our viewers in relation to Ramadan? We'll talk about timing. We'll talk about certain ways of going about focusing on Ramadan. So let's start first of all about the art of mastering this.
Well, first of all, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to you and all the viewers. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. You know, when you bring this topic up, my mind just sort of has a pattern of thinking. And I always feel that it's important to map things out, a flow chart in our minds, objectives, framework, and the process within. And we know we're talking Ramadan and to maximize Ramadan. And so I want to pull back a little bit and understand that we all know we've been in the masajids for a week now and prior years, that Allah says He gave us Ramadan, kutiba alaykum siyama, that it is prescribed so that we gain taqwa, la'allakum tattaqun. And so this has been the emphasis in Ramadan, taqwa, taqwa. And we talk about it, but sometimes I wish that we would stop and define taqwa. We will sort of, flesh it out a little bit in terms of, well, what is taqwa? And generally, we translate it in our speeches and our talks as God consciousness. But then that in itself, I feel, needs fleshing out. Because what is God consciousness? And how does Ramadan gets us there? So in my mind, when we are talking about taqwa, I see it in terms of two. I see it in terms of one, the personal, the individual, or improving it. So really, it's about relationship. So the individual improving his relation, his creator. That's one aspect of it, the individual aspect. And for me, there is also an external aspect. a community aspect. And under community, I put family. So there's that external aspect. And we see in Ramadan, the massages are filled. Everyone is in high spirit. The community is out. People are sharing iftar, sharing Taraweeh Salah. You see the community at its peak, the individual at its peak, at his peak, and the community at its peak. So maximizing Ramadan, I think we are hearing quite a lot on the personal advancement, the personal progress, extra salah, extra generosity, etc., etc. I want to also talk a little bit about or have our mind address the community aspect. And when we say community, I like to divide that into two: the internal Muslim community and the external non-Muslim community. Why do I say that? Because we are reminded in Quran that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Shahr Ramadan alladhi unzila Quran, hudal linnas. So he didn't say, I always wonder when I read this ayah, he didn't say hudal lil mu'mineen, hudal lil muslimin, but rather he generalized mankind, linnas. And for me, that talks about how can I maximize this month of Ramadan. We also have to talk about our relationship, not just with Allah, our Creator, but our relationship with our community, our internal Muslim community, and our relationship with the external non-Muslim community. So that's the framework that comes to my mind when we sort of, okay, let's begin this conversation about maximizing the benefits of fasting or the benefits of the month of Ramadan.
So the point we mentioned earlier, and I totally concur on those points you mentioned, where we talk about the internal and external. But in terms of our personal, because I think Ramadan is a very personal issue. Personal in the sense that we really want to do everything possible to reconnect this connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Within the 11 months, we tend to drift away. And so when we come in, but it is you who must learn to make your connection. The individual is, and it varies from person to person, how and what is simple and easy for you to connect to Allah, to bring the thing of beauty in terms of your relationship. So I think, number one, without proper knowledge of Allah, our worship is defective. So I think it's very important for us to focus on that, or at least our worship will be incomplete. So the knowledge, right, must sink into our bones rather than to be stored in the mind in order to bear the fruit.
Sheikh, I agree with you that there is a personal element to it. But, I was told that more than 75% of Sharia, of our deen, is about the Jama'ah, the community. And Ramadan, well, how do I improve myself? Islam is not we go on an island or a mountaintop and we seek piety as some religion sort of practice. But we seek piety in the midst of the Jama'ah because the masjid is most frequented, is filled in Ramadan. So here we are seeking what I learned from this. Without the community, I cannot achieve personal upliftment, personal improvement of my connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I cannot do it. If I think that way, then I'm sort of giving credence to those people who retire on a mountaintop as monks and so forth to seek piety and self improvement. But rather, as Muslims, we are thrown into the middle of the community in this month, which is really a month of community. It peaks, which tells me a lesson that if I am to fast Ramadan and spend Ramadan by myself in my room, in my house, without the community, family and community, it will not give me the benefit of it. So therefore, to take your point, which I agree with, it's about personal agreement, personal improvement. But where do we find it? We find it in the community. That's where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in my interpretation, that where do I look for this taqwa? Where do I look for this drawing nearer to my creator, to this purity of thought and purity of existence? I
Yeah.
find it in my community.
I like the
So
flow of this
therefore,
conversation.
it brings a responsibility. Yeah, so it brings to me that, it has to be a win-win situation. There's an old saying, no man is an island. So fine, so my community, but in order for, there's a strong interaction, a strong interdependency between me and my community. So therefore, for me to move up closer to my Lord, for me to move into being a better human being, which is the whole purpose of it, one that is conscious, one that is responsible, one that pleases Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the way he lives his life. I have to bring my community up.
Yeah.
I have
Just
to.
one point on this. Just one
Mhm.
point on this, was it, Dr. Wazir? I am in full agreement with what you're saying. This is so important. But I think what is important for us to look at, I'm looking at it from practical perspective here, that
Mhm.
there are people who put emphasis so much on the external
Mhm.
that they neglect the internal, and that's my concern.
Oh, for
Now,
sure. It's a balance shift.
yeah,
It goes either way. Some people who just retreat
yes.
into their corners, and some people who lose themselves too much.
Yeah.
And that's the balance, I think, that is Ramadan and the whole spirit of it.
So this is the beauty of Islam. Islam
Yes.
is a balanced system. وَكَذَلِكَ
Yes.
جَعَلْنَاكُمْ أُمَّةً وَسَطًا. We are
Yes.
a balanced nation. So what I find, I mean, dealing with communities and being, working in the community and experiencing things in the community, I have
Mhm.
seen that people sometimes go to two extremes.
Mhm.
One extreme, they go all external and they neglect the internal, or they
Mhm.
get so much internal that they neglect the external. And so this is the reason why um, uh, Imam Harawi, a very great scholar from Afghanistan,
Mhm.
who spoke about in his book Madarij al-Saliqeen,
Mhm.
which was uh, a particular emphasis on Imam Ibn al-Qayyim's commentary on this book, right? And he said that the steps, and he defined like 100 stations
Mhm.
about, the Salaf and the people before
Mhm.
us. And there are some steps that he mentioned. One, in remembering Allah, the remembrance of Allah, dhikr. Two, gratitude and patience, shukr and sabr. And we spoke about this very briefly
Mhm.
last time, that a Muslim
Mhm.
oscillate between sabr and shukr. Number three, self reckoning, meaning muhasaba.
Mhm.
You take yourself into account, right? Number four,
Mhm.
repentance, tawbah,
Mhm.
tawbatan nasuha. And number five, mahabba, love. So these 5 points, taken into consideration, can also be extended to the external rather than internal, in as much as we want to have this khalwa, right? This khalwa with one-on-one with Allah, because don't blame me if I
Mhm.
want to be a little selfish with my
Mhm.
um, my reward with Allah. I want to grab everything possible I can, right? But at the same time, it's important for us to strike a balance. Any thoughts on that? Can you hear me, Brother Wazir?
I think we're having some technical difficulties with the internet. I don't know on your end.
But wait, can you hear me? I'm hearing you clearly.
Okay, good, because you were breaking up a little bit.
Okay.
Um, as you, yeah, to continue, these are all part of what we are talking about. I love the points you raised. One, the dhikr of Allah, the remembrance of Allah. And the second point about patience, for me, when someone say taqwa, the heart of taqwa is patience. It's what drives. And so here's the balance you were talking about, Sheikh, that I can only we want to develop steps. We want to develop, well, what can I do one, two, three, that at the end of Ramadan I am better than when I started it. And every year I go through this cycle. And one of the foundational thing is spending a lot of time remembering and praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, seeking His mercy. So I can do that by myself, and I can go into my community and do that as well. So it offers me a sort of the best of both worlds. Secondly, patience. Well, how can I learn patience? If I'm by myself, I can never really develop patience. I have to develop patience when I'm in an environment me, when I'm in an environment that challenges me. And Sheikh, when we go to our masajids, especially in Ramadan, it can be challenging. It requires a lot of patience. Even though we're all there and we're all worshiping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there is always things going on. And there is always some distraction, some disruption. There is always something, but not in a negative way, but as part of human existence and life. And it forces us to be patient, not only with ourselves, but with my brother next to me, with children running around in the corner. It really causes me to be calm in the midst of distractions. And this is another benefit of going to the masjid in Ramadan. It forces a training ground to distractions. So, in terms of practical things, how do I maximize? I cannot maximize my Ramadan without the community, without being in the Jama'ah. And the third point I want to bring apart from that, we talk about community, Sheikh, and we're talking about upliftment of the heart. We are talking of bringing the heart closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As the Prophet said, taqwa hahuna, of bringing that out. We cannot neglect ourselves in Ramadan, neglect to consider our relationship with the non-Muslim community as well. I feel that one of the weaknesses of our Muslim community is that we are robbing ourselves out of developing taqwa. Building our relationship, demonstrating who we are to the non-Muslim community. This for me is very important. This for me is one of the responsibilities of Ramadan, where, because it all comes down to one thing. Allah didn't create man or jinn except to worship Him. And for me, the core of worship, is to spread the message of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yes, we have the rituals of worship. Yes, we have the dhikr. But the purpose of our existence is to really understand the message and spread the message. And in this month, when the message came down, when this message, came down to us, came down to be sent to mankind, this is the month when we should showcase, when we should demonstrate, when we should raise it up in front of the non-Muslim community surrounding us. But instead, I am a little saddened that we tend to be inward looking during Ramadan, a little too excessively, instead of being outward looking, holding the banner, taking it out, fasting and full of dhikr in our heart, full of sabr in our mind, full of generosity in our personality, and we take this out to the non-Muslim community. I think that is the as you said, the ribbon on the package. That for me is the bow and the ribbon and the flower on the package. I'm just sharing thoughts because
Yeah.
we can, we hear all the talks about uh, of the internal development. But I think somewhere along the line, we are losing that important aspect of why are we developing myself? Why? Why do I need the taqwa? Is to give the message. That's all it is, to give the message. And so I developed the taqwa to give the message. And for me, to maximize Ramadan, to maximize the benefits of Ramadan, cannot exclude how we demonstrate this personality that we salat and extra zikr. We can't hide the light under a bushel, so to speak.
Yeah. As you have said, from the external perspective, in order to practice sabr, you have to be dealing with people because people can test you. We did a poll the other day at at our community, where in a gathering about 450 people, we have like over uh, more than a dozen different countries people from different culture, right? You name it. India, Pakistan, Senegal,
Mhm.
Mali, Egypt, Yemen, Sudan, Mauritius. So I was just doing that to see the kind of package we have. So whenever you have a package like that, I mean, there are people with different mentality, different culture that sometimes we tend not to appreciate. But Ramadan tests us to see how we can interact with people. And the Prophet alayhi salam, he rightfully he said, "Wasamu nisfu sabr."
Yeah,
Right? He
yeah,
says, "Wasamu nisfu sabr, wa tuhuru bi nisfu iman."
yeah.
He
So,
said that fasting is half of patience, and
mhm,
purification is the other half, which is the half of iman. So
mhm,
really, to complete between sabr and iman, this is how we are testing. So like you going into the parking lot, and the guy who manages the parking lot is telling you, brother, you need to park there. You cannot. You need to listen, right? It's part of interacting with people. And so we ended up with so many different situations where sometimes people feel that I can't listen to people, but we need to follow certain orders. We are tested. The Ramadan tests us, and in many different ways, mixing with
mhm.
people, standing shoulder to shoulder, putting our forehead down on the ground together, lining up, together and with one unison. And this brings the totality and the completion of this ummah.
In Ramadan, we are our best. We are supposed to be our best. Because this is when, like no other time during the year, do we do the amount of fasting, the amount of zikr, and the generosity. So for me, the humaneness, the
Yeah,
humanity in us peaks in Ramadan. And that's why I'm putting a call out, through your show for all the massages, especially in the last 10 days of Ramadan. Instead of moving towards inward looking, we should invite our non Muslim community. That's when the doors should be open. Come see us when we are at our best. Come
yeah,
see us when we are at our best, when her behavior is so sublime. See us now, because now we think we represent Islam the most.
yeah,
So we have a if I always used to tease, um, when we are going out somewhere, we put on our best dress, we put on our best, um, to look our best. A young man is going to make a proposal to a young lady. He looks the best, he tries the best, and the intention when he goes there presenting the best side of him, he will meet what he wants, he will get what he wants, the approval of whatever it is. And for me, in the same way, I want to challenge our communities or listeners who are listening, that they should make an attempt, raise their voice, make the suggestion that we always talk about the last 10 days of Ramadan and how we should spend it. And all of that is true, and I'm not minimizing it. But what I'm saying, when we are at our best, This is the time to bring in the non-Muslim community to see us, to watch us, to interact with. This is when we are the most patient. This is when we are the most generous. This is when our faces are glowing. And this is when they see, ah, that is what Islam is. That's what I want. So, that for me is how we maximize Islam. When we can influence a Muslim and a non Muslim to be a better person. And I challenge everyone when I look at it during Ramadan, what kind of influence did I have on my environment? That's how I count my maximizing of Ramadan. What positive vibes did I give up? When I used to be impatient, am I patient? When I used to be hasty, I'm more calm. So my interaction with my brothers and sisters, my interaction with my family, my interaction with my workers who are not co-workers, who are not Muslims, and so forth, are they seeing a difference? Or is it that I live one life in the masjid and another life outside of the masjid? I live one life in my home and another life outside of the home. Am I having a dichotomy of personality? That should not be. So for me, Sheikh, I'm sorry. I know I'm going out on a tangent here with your topic, but I think it's uh, a neglected aspect of it. And this for me is in Ramadan, I maximize a personal view, my Ramadan, when my influence, of course, on myself and those around me is very positive,
Yeah.
and their lives is influenced towards an improvement.
Yeah.
If we can do that, I think we maximize our Ramadan.
Absolutely. Jazakumullah khair. I mean, all I can say at the end of this program here, that there is no better time than Ramadan for a person who has a short fuse train himself not to blow his fuse out. You know, this is the best time, and this is why the Prophet says that if someone irritates you, all you say, "Ana sa'im."
And I saw him.
I'm fasting, man. Bro, I am fasting. I'm not going to argue with you. I'm not going to challenge you. And this challenging, I have seen people challenging each other also on social media. It's not
Mhm.
necessarily verbal, it's even written, right?
Yes, yes.
People go on social media, Instagram and Facebook, and they bash each other for issues that may not necessarily be so big issue of aqidah. Ramadan, guys, we need to cool it down. Let us allow Ramadan to be that training ground. Let us school it. Ana Sa'ib.
What Sheikh, one of the in my mind, one of the great biggest thing that create friction, conflict, disunity, and general negative human behavior is unmanaged ego.
Yeah.
Unmanaged ego. Now, ego is part of us. We can't get rid of it. But
Yeah.
managing ego is the challenge. And
You remind me, I read a piece from Sheikh Hatim. He
yes,
says you're not fasting by staying away from food. Your ego should also fast.
exactly.
Right?
Managing that ego. And
Yeah.
I think Ramadan gives us an opportunity to learn managing our ego, because really, or in our interactions with our brothers and sisters, with our families, especially our families, with our non-Muslim community members, that interaction is often uh, taking the side wherever our ego takes it. If my ego is it the ego takes the relationship where it wants it to be.
Yeah.
So
And I don't want us to miss this point. We're not only talking about Jama, we're talking here about family too. And this
yes,
between
yes,
husband and wife,
oh
you know,
yes,
kids and parents. All
yes,
of this here must be within the parameters, because this
exactly.
is the most patience you have to have within the
Yeah.
family itself.
Yeah, we especially in Ramadan is a training ground. Um, the ego, we always feel the need to win the discussion
Yeah.
win the argument. So the ego shifts us from why are we interacting?
Or
Are we
who has the last say?
exactly. So we lose perspective of why we are interacting. For a Muslim, and in his interaction with other people is a reflection of his interaction with his creator. I
Yeah.
interact with my creator in order to be better and in order to have a positive outcome.
Yeah.
That should reflect now in my reaction with my wife, with my children, with the husband, with my community. I am not interacting to win. I'm interacting for us all to win, a win win situation. I'm
Yeah.
reacting so that there's a positive end result, a positive outcome, because under that is the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
All
So
right.
therefore, Sheikh, it's wonderful that we can sort of talk about how to maximize the
Yeah.
Ramadan and take it outside of the normal envelope, push
Yes.
the envelope
Yeah.
outside of the normal
Yeah.
conversation.
It's not a normal discussion of having maximizing. It's beyond that normal discussion.
Our viewers will hear that in the masjid almost every single night, the normal.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
But we need to expand the thinking. It's part, I think that's one of the usefulness of your program, to expand the thinking, to push the envelope, to take it out of a narrow perspective and to see the overall, to zoom out and see how wonderful not just Ramadan is, but Islam, and how wonderful we as Muslims have to be to continue to deserve the Ramadan and continue to earn the Islam.
Jazakumullah khair, brother Wazir. I mean, we have exceeded our time, but it was really good. May Allah bless you and your family. May Allah keep you well. And again, as we said, asamu nisfu sabr, that fasting is half of sabr, half of patience. And so therefore, let us try as much as possible, inshallah, to take all these pointers that we can able to be much more what you call in consistency with the Islamic principle. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless us all. May Allah bless our community. May Allah bless all our viewers. And looking forward to see you again, inshallah, some other time. Until then, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.